Welcome to the 2022 Houston Underwater Film Festival, supported and sponsored by the Houston Underwater Photographic Society. And a special welcome to our on-demand viewers. My name is Craig Beasley. Along with my lovely spouse Betsy, I'm co-chair of the festival, and I'll be your MC today. Please take a moment to silence your phone and then settle in to enjoy a taste of what is to come. Our show will begin in a few moments. And now, on with the show.
life-giving water sources for all the organisms. Mysterious underground lakes. A discovery story in the depth of crystal water.
In the last years, we had to change our diving mask to another type of mask. Due to travel restrictions, our favorite dive sites were beyond our reach. But this was an opportunity to explore our local waters, to dive in lakes and rivers in our backyards. Here, we can also swim with large shoals of fish, such as common roach, common bleak, common bream, or silver bream. Common rods feed on the algae carpet in bigger groups. We can often encounter bigger fish, such as carps, as they swim around with buddies. The tench is much shyer and favors the thick underwater vegetation. The underwater life seems to be idyllic. In May, the bleak spawns in shallow water close to the shore. The eggs are released to the open water, and even other specimens of the shoal try to eat them. It's like a bait ball, and it attracts predators. Perches are swimming around the bait ball, but now they try to feed on the nutrient-rich eggs. Even an eel appears on the feast. Predators with sharp teeth are lurking around small fish. There is no escape from the jaws. The asp has no teeth, yet it's a terrific, frightful predator. The biggest predator of our backyard is the giant Wells catfish, the shark of lakes and rivers. Even this big carp avoids a closer encounter with this predator. These jaws grab even birds from the surface. The shallow pond populated by only one invasive species, the Prussian carp. Although there are no underwater threats, they should be very cautious. A gray heron, a fearful predator, a precise, quick strike, and there is no escape. We should visit the waterfronts not only for fish, but also for other animals, such as damsel and dragonflies. In colder months, we can often find big clouds of small shrimp-like crustaceans known as mizzids. Pond skaters are gliding on the surface of the water, searching for smaller insects to feed on. Other nature lovers come to the waters because of the birds. Our lakes and rivers in our backyards are just really wonderful. When travel restrictions are finally lifted, we should still consider diving in our local waters instead of booking a high-carbon flight thousands of kilometers away.
In a quiet corner of British Columbia, the western toad tadpoles embark on their incredible daily migration. A fearless and epic journey as these little animals navigate the perils of the aquatic environment and metamorphosis. For the past 4 years, I've been coming to a remote lake on Vancouver Island where each springtime the western toads lay their eggs. In just a matter of days, these eggs will hatch into tadpoles. Then, an amazing unseen journey begins. Each morning, the tadpoles come together to form a cloud, a meandering congregation of hundreds of thousands of tadpoles, all with a singular focus. They rise from the deeper parts of the lake and travel towards a specific area of shallow water, swimming a daring gauntlet along the way. Weaving in and out of lily pads, it's one of the most incredible yet rarely seen migrations. It's also a very challenging environment to photograph. These little guys move surprisingly fast, and with constantly changing lighting conditions and visibility, it is one of the toughest natural events I've filmed. They're always on the move, so for me, the key is to spend as many hours in the water as possible, capturing footage so I can share this story. In an effort to reduce the impact of my presence here, I choose to snorkel, as it's the least invasive method for me to capture my images. A simple wetsuit, mask, snorkel, and fins make it easier for me to get close to these fearless little creatures. It's a fragile environment, and as with most lakes, the bottom substrate is very fine and loose, so I have to be especially careful with my movements or I'll lose visibility. Even the tadpoles can stir up the silt. I also take advantage of the natural trails made from beavers that live here. They like to eat the lily pad roots, leaving behind a series of natural trails that I make use of where possible. People don't think of tadpoles as being photogenic, but when you take the time to look at their features, they're actually very cute. They have a permanent smile on their face that you form an instant connection with. Witnessing their journey each day, there's a strong emotional bond I can't help but feel. Being born in British Columbia, I remember often seeing tadpoles as a young boy, so to be in the water as a photographer, capturing their journey now, it has been a lifetime in the making. Seeing the thick black mass of tadpoles moving like a winding river was just mind-blowing. An estimated 3 million tadpoles live in this one location. One of my friends compared it to the migration of wildebeest moving across the Serengeti, but on a tiny scale. The tadpoles feed on algae found on lily pads, grass, fallen logs, and even the occasional hand. When they're not swimming, you can bet these little ones are feeding. Their metamorphosis requires a lot of food, and the lake has an abundance of nutrients ready to fuel their journey. But their journey is not without danger, as the tadpoles aren't the only animals living in this lake looking for food. Water bugs will strike on an unsuspecting lone tadpole, feeding on its eyeballs, a creepy, heartbreaking display of predatory skill, but one necessary for its own survival. And whilst loons and trout will also impose their predatory expertise onto the tadpoles, the most striking of predators is the leech. Detecting their prey with a range of different sophisticated sensors, these leeches move quickly before striking and swallowing their prey. It's an impressive but sad sight when the tadpoles meet such a grisly end. However, it's all an important part of the lake's fragile ecosystem. Those that survive the long swim seek refuge in the shallow area of the lake, basking in the warmer, oxygen-rich waters and feeding on the abundance of microplants and algae. In a few hours, they'll turn around and run the gauntlet once more, this time back towards the deeper parts of the lake, where they'll rest for the night before repeating the entire migration the next day and the next. During the 6 to 8 weeks of their metamorphosis, the tadpoles will evolve dramatically. First, their back legs will begin to appear, which they'll start using while swimming. They develop patterns and colors, and their front legs will grow internally before breaking out of their thin skin. The tadpoles slowly start to use their new legs, learning how to walk and hop underwater. As other respiratory systems begin to develop, they will gradually stop extracting oxygen from the water using their gills. Finally, their tails will become redundant, and the tadpoles will take their first clumsy steps on land, becoming toadlets. After 4 seasons of filming here, I finally got to see a western toad take its very first bites, eating tiny bugs under the canopy of the forest. They now begin a new journey on land, before eventually heading back to their aquatic birthplace to find a mate and start the cycle once more, introducing a new generation of tadpoles to a fragile environment that faces constant threat from urban development. This year I asked conservationists Christina Mittelmeier and Paul Nicklin to join me while filming the migration.
What I really loved about this event, it's just the fascination I have with an animal that you never get to see underwater. We get to imagine the little tadpoles, but following in their migration, being part of their group as they move through the lake, for me was just mesmerizing. I felt like a tadpole.
At first you jump in the water here and you start to see the swarms. You see millions of these tadpoles and you're disconnected from them. But then you start to spend hours every day with them and you start to get very intimate and close with them, looking at their individual eyes, their individual characters, and you get to sort of almost see into the soul of a single tadpole. You have this sort of emotional connection to this animal and you realize they are an indicator species to a fragile and in many ways a changing and vulnerable ecosystem.
Like Paul and Christina, I also love the challenge of capturing these incredible wildlife moments. Bringing these unseen underwater marvels into people's lives is highly important. Through better communication comes understanding, and through better understanding, together we will learn to respect and preserve these fragile and threatened ecosystems. At some point, we must learn to put these little guys first. As a photographer, it was incredibly rewarding to see my experiences published for others to discover. Watching the tadpole story jump to life in the pages of a magazine is an interesting continuation to their journey. By sharing their story in ways that will enter homes around the world, it will help people connect with a species that is rarely seen or understood. To see these aquatic tadpoles evolve into terrestrial animals before my own eyes was humbling and heartwarming. It left me feeling like a proud parent, and it's proof that the smallest of animals can have the biggest of impacts.
The first time you see a great white shark in the water, even in the distance, it changes you. It's an experience that most people will never have, but when it happens, it's truly awe-inspiring.
All right, you can lean over, you can use this wire, don't use the cable though, okay? I got a hand on your weights as you're stepping across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119,
everything you've heard, everything you think you know, immediately fades away. And you instantly realize you're in the presence of one of the most beautiful and graceful creatures on the planet. Movies and sensationalized journalism have exploited a deep, primal fear within us. A fear that was programmed into our brains eons ago. A fear that we're hard-coded to react to. A fear that tells us we need to be afraid in order to survive. But the first time you enter the water with a great white shark, that fear instantly dissolves and is replaced with a sense of wonder.
How do marine creatures deal with buoyancy? Most of bony fish have a swim bladder that helps them achieve perfect neutral buoyancy at any depth. This allows them to save energy while swimming. Other fish don't have a swim bladder, and their lifestyle is different because of that. Most of them spend a great amount of time on the seafloor, and their eyes are often on the top of their head to improve their field of view. In the absence of a swim bladder, some sharks and rays need to swim all the time to avoid sinking to the bottom. Others can stop and rest because they can pump water through their gills while being motionless. The turtle doesn't have a swim bladder, but she has lungs and dives on one breath of air. She controls her buoyancy with her lung volume, and she is very good at it. She takes just the right amount of air in her lungs to establish the right buoyancy at target depth. She chooses either to be slightly negatively buoyant to forage comfortably on the seafloor, neutrally buoyant so she can swim over the reef easily, either to travel somewhere or to make a survey of her feeding grounds, looking for the best sponges to eat, or she can take enough air in her lungs to be positively buoyant so she can forage comfortably under an overhang without spending energy to stay there. Since the day she pulled herself out of a sandpit to run toward her destiny, the turtle has learned all this dive skill on her own. Not too bad for an air-breathing animal born on dry land.
"2020. This was planned to be a year of adventure, exploring Indonesia, discovering and filming a different culture and dive sites I'd only ever dreamed of. But as John Lennon once said, life is something that happens while you're busy making other plans. And in this case, what life had in mind was COVID-19. However, my wife and I are lucky enough to live on the Mediterranean island of Gozo, so there's plenty to keep us occupied. It seems to be the case, even though there is so much to see, people take their home surroundings for granted. And I guess we're no different. But the lack of visiting divers allowed us to see another side to our home dive sites. We had nearly empty wrecks and hunting jacks passing closer by. We discovered a scary looking fang-toothed moray we'd never seen before. More wrecks that we managed to have to ourselves, no other divers in sight. Huge pinnacles full of fish, large and small. There were statues to visit. And even the eels were performing for the camera. We had rehabilitated rescued turtles to film. There were domestic arguments between neighbours. The empty beaches made the Maltese Islands more attractive to turtles for nesting, so of course we had babysitting duties. There were giant grouper in numbers we hadn't seen for years. We had time to rediscover that the scenery can be stunning. And the colours spectacular. So life, with all its problems and surprises, gave us a journey of discovery and adventure after all. And besides, there's always next year.
Charmouth Beach in Dorset. An impressive landscape where grey, crumbling cliffs meet the sea. Charmouth boasts picturesque walks and fossils in abundance. Its rich geological history is often celebrated, but the beach also hosts a broad diversity of living marine life too, connecting us to those that came before them. The sea's immense power and size is a source of inspiration to many, but this vastness is not limited to how large it is. Our oceans are also a connection to deep time, and Charmouth is the perfect setting to observe this history alive. Just off the beach, there are a plethora of marine animals living and breeding over the exact grounds their ancestors were buried some 200 million years ago. Some of the most influential principles in biology and geology are demonstrated here. James Hutton in 1785 coined the famous geological principle, "The present is the key to the past." He thought that by observing processes in nature today, we could learn about how the world worked in times past. For example, the sea's persistent action against the cliffs, or the running of water shaping river valleys. The combination of landslides, fossils, and diverse marine fauna at Charmouth represents a poetic synergy of nature's past, present, and future. While fossil hunting at Charmouth, fragments of fossilised shark fin spine and bullet-shaped squid remains can be found amongst the shingle. And while under the water, a few metres from the strand line, their distant relatives, the lesser spotted cat shark and cuttlefish, go about their business today. Between their existences, millions of years have passed. The UK has migrated north from subtropical latitudes, mountain ranges have formed, and the dinosaurs have perished. But somehow, their descendants are here today, and they're thriving in colourful seaweed reefs growing from the very deposits their predecessors were preserved in. After the plankton bloom in spring, jellyfish are found in abundance, drifting about in the water column making use of abundant foodstuffs. Due to their soft bodies, no remains of these animals have been found at Charmouth, but there is no doubt that they too were here sharing the seas with the ichthyosaurs and ammonites. It's impossible to truly comprehend how the earth has changed over such time. but the jellyfish has witnessed it all from the solace of their brainless, mostly water-based bodies. Of course, we should continue to celebrate the Jurassic Coast's world-class geology. But perhaps the true value of this stretch of coastline is only fully appreciated when the juxtaposition of life, both past and present, is considered.
The oceans are not only populated by fish. A tribe of animals, older than the dinosaurs, has adapted to many habitats and lifestyles over time. Some crabs dig like dozers in the sand, in search of food. They search for mussels, mollusks and worms. Lobsters hide during the day, under rocks and in crevices. They are long-living, and can get older than 70 years. Only at night, you can admire the squat lobster, with its vivid colors. The poisonous tentacles of anemones offer protection from predators. For small, like these shrimps, or true giants like the stone crab. Not all crustaceans live on the ground. Some swim around freely. Krill ascends from the depths at night to feed on plankton, or even to serve as food for corals, anemones, or other. Who has some prey better hides itself. Being invisible is very important. Growth on the body, which resembles the environment, helps to merge with the background. Transparency and body shape as well. But only the true masters of camouflage merge completely with their surroundings.
Underwater hot springs are thought to be the place where life on this planet originated. In Sulawesi, volcanic activity created a hot spring where unique marine life gathers. Strange and mysterious creatures live here. Sometimes you can't be sure if they are plant or animal. tiny crabs have developed different strategies to survive. Some decorate themselves with live anemones. Microorganisms with ancient DNA thrive in the mineral-rich hot water. Some fish, like the frogfish, look like sponges and have perfectly adapted to their surroundings. Crabs are trying to catch plankton, which is drifting by. Around the streams of hot water, flatworms and feather stars dance gracefully in the water column. Senior soft corals make a great hiding place for this porcelain crab. This tiny cuttlefish isn't bad at camouflaging between the filtering polyps either. Many animals hide by looking like other creatures. This ornate ghost pipefish pair blends in perfectly with the feather star to protect themselves and keep their babies safe. There is life everywhere you look. Delicate crabs, tiny nudibranchs, and even tinier shrimp. The Pontohi seahorse is the smallest seahorse in the world. It's incredibly difficult to find because it is smaller than a human fingernail. The octopus is a great hunter. 9 brains, 8 arms, and 3 hearts help him find crustaceans and other small organisms that live in the sand. The eyes of the mantis shrimp are like no other. They have 16 different color receptors compared to only 3 in human eyes. They see colors we cannot even imagine. Stonefish and scorpionfish are grim-looking. All of them are highly venomous, but beautiful in their own way. Intelligent cuttlefish can change their color and the pattern of their skin in astonishing ways. Our planet is full of mysteries and fascinating creatures. It becomes even more amazing the closer we look.
As the sun sets, the world's largest animal migration begins. A huge biomass from the deep rises to the surface in search of food. Larval and juvenile animals, such as this wonderpuss, can be found in the blackness. This biomass is referred to as the deep scattering layer. It can be so dense that it can reflect sonar signals. In the black water, you can find strange pelagic animals, some in their larval form, some that are ready to settle on the reef, and some that will spend their lives in a pelagic existence. The paper nautilus is a pelagic animal that comes up from the depths for food and to find mates. Squid are voracious predators that use speed and agility to help push the biomass upwards. More than 10 species of squid can be found in Anlau's black water, including the beautiful diamond squid. They can reach a size of 70 pounds. This larval snail looks nothing like the adult. A pelagic nudibranch has the swimming style of a fish. Hanging on to a bit of flotsam can make you appear larger and help avoid predators. The driftfish lives in a jellyfish and pushes it along. The jelly is able to sting more fish this way, and the fish eats the scraps. The filefish tries to steal the driftfish's jellyfish. It will use the jelly for food and protection. The jellyfish was a lot better off with the driftfish. The juvenile moray eel looks like a transparent, undulating ribbon. The deep-water juvenile golden lanternfish also uses transparency to hide. The ribbonfish is from the deep abyss. At night, it feeds on plankton just below the surface. The elaborate banners of the juvenile soapfish mimic venomous jellyfish. This flying gurnard seems to be fascinated by its image in the camera. Phronema is a parasite that will hollow out a living salp and lay her eggs inside. Phronema is one of the few crustaceans to brood and care for her young. All sorts of interesting crustaceans can be found in the blackness. This mantis shrimp is getting ready to find a reef to settle down on, but only after it dances in front of the video lights. This little shrimp feeds on plankton and then tows its excrement around as shelter. Who would have guessed that lobsters start out as flat and transparent? Some fish hitch a ride on the many graceful jellyfish. Jellyfish are a brainless predator that will intersect with the vertical migration of the deep scattering layer. The blackwater world appears to be beautiful, but it can also be brutal, where survival depends on speed, transparency, and mimicry. We have just touched on some of the interesting and bizarre creatures that can be found during the world's largest migration.
above the Arctic Circle. It's dark, cold, and quiet below the old dock. The fish is staying in deeper waters. A halibut carcass from a fisherman. Let the feast begin. A hungry cormorant joins the party. It's January and the sun is back above the horizon. The Arctic water is crystal clear. Days are getting longer and spring is on its way. The sunlight causes an algae bloom and the shallows have an abundance of food. A lumpsucker is desperately trying to keep a pole clean from algae. This is where the eggs will be placed later on. An old wolffish. He's resting after a hard winter in the deep. He will regain his strength by feeding in shallow waters. It's summer, and the sun will stay above the horizon both day and night. Zooplankton is attracting schools of pollock. The halibut is lurking in the kelp. It's fall and the lumpsucker has entertained 2 females. He will guard the 2 egg clusters for a couple of months. The Arctic red jellyfish have grown to full size during the summer. They are slowly getting weaker and will eventually die. They will be food for the crustaceans who have to face another winter in the dark. Temperature is falling. Days are getting shorter and the sea anemones are retreating. Once again, the old dock is ready for the Arctic winter.
I had no idea that living at sea would enable me to discover the affectionate side of sharks. You would think that somebody like me doing shark dives, probably more than anyone on the planet, would have no arms or legs. And you can see I'm perfectly fine. My name is Jim Abernathy. I'm a conservationist, an ecotourism operator focusing on sharks. In my childhood, growing up here in Florida, starting to scuba dive, I never wanted to go where there were a lot of people. I always wanted to go and experience wildlife. Everywhere I went, there was an abundance of sharks. So in the 80s, I started running ecotourism to all the places in the Caribbean, looking for the best shark dives. But one day, I had to come back across the Gulf Stream, and it was going to be really rough. So I went to a place that's a little bit protected on the Little Bahama Bank. And within an hour, we had 5 16-foot or larger tiger sharks, as well as lemon sharks and Caribbean reef sharks. I named Tiger Beach because I knew that at some point when the rest of the world is without sharks, they will come to the Bahamas, and I wanted to give the illusion that it was close to a beach. As most of the world knows, it's 25 miles from land, with the hopes that they would get there. Sharks, when they hear our boat, will actually chase the boat to the mooring or wherever we're going to go. The star of Tiger Beach for the last couple decades has been a 15-foot tiger shark by the name of Emma. She's in 14 different documentaries. You know, she's world famous. She's probably the most photographed shark in the world. She would only come in really, really close when I was there. In fact, one of the producers making a film said, "Jim, I should be making a film about your relationship with Emma. How long has this been going on?" I denied it. You don't want to be labeled a crazy guy that's got a relationship with a shark. Because I've removed 4 hooks from her in the last 20 years, using love and affection to gain a sense of trust, she's very, very comfortable. The affection is hands-on, rubbing their head. I usually use a hand signal, which is rubbing my thumb to my fingertips, and the shark swims directly towards me. I pull the shark into my head so I can look right at the hook in its jaw, and then mentally figure out how to get the hook out. And I started teaching everyone how to make friends with a shark without feeding them. If a wild shark spends a lot of time around us, at some point that shark will realize that it's not being abused, and it's going to become more complacent, and it's going to swim around us with very, very little concern. The tiger sharks are really playful, and they're also very curious, kind of like our dogs. Whatever I have in my hand, they think it's their new toy. Unfortunately, they're really expensive cameras. Although it's funny, it's not funny if it's your camera. Even though they're not going to attack, playing with you can kill you if you don't know that there's a shark about to play with you, because like dogs, they use their mouth. So the key thing is point to the shark and then tap people on both sides to make sure that they don't see them immediately. A shark attack is misnamed. It's really a shark mistake. And in the conditions that we have, the chances for a mistake to happen are really, really low. Tiger Beach for me is a place where I can go and see friends that I've made across the last 20 years and hopefully answer my prayers that they're not killed. Because sadly, their future is dim. Making friends with a wild animal is so impactful. You change from whatever your life was before that to that point, you will pursue getting close to wildlife. There's no stronger way that I can help people into trying to protect an animal that probably in their life at some point they hated. So to be privileged enough to be able to represent them, to be their voice, and change fear into love is powerful.